Now, chapter 1 of Political Treatise by Baruch Spinoza. No, chapter 2. Chapter 1 was kind of like, it's an introduction, basically. Now, in chapter 1, he tries to explain what natural right is, because this concept of natural right is so critical. Remember, in this book, he's talking about government organization. And in fact, the smallest unit, building block of government is this thing called natural right. And it was so interesting for me to see it from that, to understand government from this angle. I've never thought about it that way. So he saw it fit that in chapter 2, which is basically chapter 1, he explains what natural right is. Because government is basically we as humans giving out some of our natural right to sovereign, to the collective, maybe, or to an individual if it's a monarchy, to the collective if it's a democracy, or to a group of people if it's an aristocracy. These forms of government he talks about in the rest of the book. Now, he says natural rights come from God. But what is actually exactly is natural right? So he says that natural right is the right and power to exist and operate. Like, it's that ability an individual has to perpetuate themselves, to expand themselves, or to expand their existence and to preserve their existence. Whatever they do to preserve and perpetuate and expand their existence is what is natural, is a natural right. Now, here is something that is that made me think a lot. He says natural right comes from God. But here is the thing. When we think of God, we usually think of God as God wants people to be virtuous, people to do right things. But the right and evil are not natural. That's what Baruch argues in this chapter. They are not natural. Right and wrong, these are concepts we've come up with when we form Commonwealth. In nature, there is nothing like raw evil or good. The only evil you can do in nature is to yourself. But anything else you do to others is not evil, because you are trying to preserve your own existence and to expand it. So whether you steal, whether you grab, whether you kill, whatever you do to others is not evil in the pure natural state, where everybody for himself or herself. Now, in that case, your natural right is your ability to do all that. So, so he says, if human nature had been constituted that men should live according to the mere dictates of reason and attempt that thing considered the other. In case of natural right, okay. He makes another point. He draw. I think I've mentioned this a bit of this, that he brings your focus to look at that there is a contradiction between what God put in place actually and what we think God put in place. So we usually think God put in place, as I've said, where an environment where people need to act virtuous, and then there is evil that is condemned. But the laws of nature, which he himself argues were put in place by God, that's not how they work. Nature is very cruel. It's for everybody to try to survive. It's fittest for it's survival for the fittest, as somebody else has said after Baruch. He says in the state of nature, everybody is driven by their need to survive and desire and passion. Reason is kind of like, while even when you use reason in the state of nature, it's still for you to expand and preserve your existence. It's not like to be good to the neighbor and things like that. So he says, whenever anything in nature seems to us ridiculous, absurd, or evil, it is because we have but a partial knowledge of things and are in the main ignorant of the order and coherence of nature as a whole, and because we want everything to be arranged according to the dictate of our own reason, although in fact what our reason pronounces bad is not bad as regards the order of laws of universal nature, but only as regards the laws of our own nature taken separately. So we might look at nature, things happening in nature, and sometimes they look ridiculous, absurd, or evil. But Baruch says that's because we are ignorant for the most part of how nature works, and we just want nature to function in such a way that we are safe. But that's not how nature works. Nature works using different laws. Yeah, so that's what he says about natural right in chapter 2. And yeah.